on like 3 minutes as well.
Okay, so Emma's not here, so Harika is reading the passage that Emma sent her. Talk a little louder, start talking.
Okay, so Emma's passage was from Act 2, Scene 3, and it's lines 203 to 210. So the passage says, "They say the lady is fair, 'tis a truth. I can bear them witness, and virtuous 'tis so, I cannot reprove it. And wise, but for loving me by my troth, it is no addition to her wit, nor no great argument of her folly, for I will be horribly in love with her. I may chance have some odd quirks and remnants of wit broken on me because I have railed so long against marriage. But doth not the appetite alter?" And so Emma said, "I think that this passage is important in showing the amount of change that Beatrice and Benedict had throughout the book. They each changed to have a warmer heart in the end. One of the first things that I thought of while reading this was when I was younger. When you are a child and you like someone, it becomes all that you can think about, and it fills up all of your time. I would write in my little journals about that person and talk to my friends about who we all liked. When we were children, who we liked was one of the biggest secrets that we could have, and we would not want anyone to know. I related this to the way that both Benedict and Beatrice are acting, in that they are hiding their feelings and pretending that they are not there. But once they finally reveal how they feel, it is a very big deal and a big scene. I also think that this passage is important because it also shows that Benedict is not just claiming to love Beatrice, but also has reasons, like her intelligence and her attitude to life. It shows that he is not being rash and thinking that he is in love with her. He is also proclaiming that he has changed, saying that he said people might make fun of him because he went from hating marriage to supporting it. The fact that he is willing to fess up to how he has changed, but also said that he will get made fun of shows that he has matured when it comes to his relationships with women and how he treats them. Overall, I think that this passage is important in showing how some characters can change in this play, and it also shows that love is one of the most powerful forces in the world. This is a common theme in the book, showing what people would do for love and how they respond to when they end up falling in love with someone. Okay, so we just read what Emma said and then we respond to it.
That was the end of Emma's.
Yeah, that was the end of Emma's, and so now we're going to respond.
Okay. So I really liked how she talks about how like when you like people when you're little, because Benedict and Beatrice were both kind of kids in this sense with their attitude. They're always sarcastic, they're always mocking each other, and it's kind of I know they're both holding back, but at some point I'm like, well, they were kind of forced to like each other, which kind of reminds me of like when my friends would be like, oh my god, you guys would be such a cute couple, like stuff like that. I don't know, but I agree with this somewhat, but then on the other hand, I'm like, well, do they really truly like each other, or is it just a trick of the mind?
I like how she used like the anecdote from like when she was younger, and how when we were younger, like that we were related more to Benedict and Beatrice as like, because Sarah said and Emma said their personalities are different. I like how she pointed out that like the common theme in the book was like what people would do for love, because this whole book, like two of the main storylines, like with Claudio and Hero, Benedict and Beatrice, are about love and like the trials and tribulations that like people who are in love go through. So I like how she like summed up the theme and said that it shows what people would do for love and how they respond to it.
I liked her when I was younger anecdote because that kind of shows the level of maturity Benedict and Beatrice are at. And like you said with the witty and the mockery, it's like what people do in like 4th grade when they like someone, they like tease them and make fun of them, and they're like, oh, I hate you, but it's like, no, I don't. And that was kind of them when they like found the love letters. They didn't actually hate each other. So, in the common theme, I thought it was great how she said the love, because you kind of see that in life too. Because a lot of drama is caused by people liking each other and the love that it does. So, yeah.
Okay. Sarah, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. So, my quote is basically just to give a little context, it's Don John, and he's talking about Claudio. So he says, any bar, any cross, any impediment will be medicinable to me. I am sick and displeasure to him, and whatsoever comes athwart his affection ranges evenly with mine. How canst thou cross this marriage? And that's from Act 2, Scene 2, lines 4 through 10. And so I interpret this quote as like marriage was a very important kind of event in their time. Like they respected it. It had so many aspects in it, like the love, the religion, because I know religion was very important in this time. And so when he decides how canst thou cross this marriage, I feel like that's very. He knows that he needs, in order to ruin Claudio, he needs to wreck his marriage because that's so valued in this time. And I feel like he's so like angry with Claudio because of this jealousy, and I feel like we see that in modern times a lot too. Like this jealousy that kind of drives us to do like these cruel things, which is what Don John does all the time. Like if you're jealous of someone who has a higher position, who has better grades than you, who has like a higher job position than you, you're gonna want to do things to like kind of get rid of them, and that makes like so you can take over, and that's awful, but like that's just what our brain set is at because we're all selfish and like focused on ourselves. But some implications from this quote. I think that Claudio's connection to Don Pedro is why Don John despises Claudio so much, because Don John doesn't have like a specific reason to hate Claudio just for being Claudio, because he's never done anything to him. But so Don John's hatred is coming from his despise for his brother Don Pedro, because of like the envy and jealousy that Don Pedro is the prince, like I was talking about the jealousy. And so I believe that Don John is like planning on ruining Claudio's romance because he's constantly angry that he's not the prince, so he tries to ruin everybody's life who has a higher position than him, including Don Pedro and like his friend, Don Pedro's friends around him, like Claudio. So like on the outside, Don John might just seem like an evil, like devious brother that likes to mess around and ruin things, but on the inside you can probably see that there's actually some emotional damage, maybe from like experiencing like this favoritism that for so long about like everybody loving Don Pedro, and it's just taking a toll on him, and that causes this kind of erratic behavior. And I think this could possibly mean that Don John could actually be like a completely different person and have a completely different personality if he had more attention and more power than he does. But since he doesn't, this is why he wants to ruin Claudio and so many people.
Okay.
So we have a minute each.
Yeah, we can do up to 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be exactly 2 minutes.
Oh, cool.
So we don't have to. So I think it's really great how you brought up the jealousy point and how like it's human nature to be jealous of people, because I think that applies to like all aspects of life, like in whatever age group you are. Like, you know, starting from like in elementary school, you're jealous of people, I don't know, like for like having the toy that you want, or like when you get to high school, it's like the grades, and when you get to like, you know, later in life, it's like the job or like the person. So I think it's cool how like you incorporated like the theme that's like overall in everyone's life into the story, because it is true how like Don John, you know, he didn't have the attention and the power that his older brother or like Claudio or Leonardo had, so he was just jealous. Everybody had all this like influence and he didn't, so it's why like that's why he did all the actions that he did, because he was jealous. So I think it's good that you brought that up.
I liked your point of how if Don John had a different life and he was given the attention that he wants and was loved by someone, he'd be different. And I think that ties to like what Emma said, and like how the common theme of love, I think it's like everyone needs to feel love in their life, and since Don John never felt that was kind of his motive for his behavior. And since Don Pedro, like, he was good friends with Claudio and all of that, it just kind of shows that. And your jealousy point, it's like when we're younger and like the toys, like people are like, no, it's like, it's okay, like let them have it. And we're taught to not be jealous, but in some people, like, you'll still feel it, it's just not everyone shows it. And Don John shows it and tries to ruin people that have what he wants. So he never got that because he was never the loved one.
Okay, so I'll go next. So the passage I picked is from Act 5, Scene 1, lines 143 to 147. And it's when Benedict is challenging Claudio. So he says, "You are a villain, I jest not. I will make it good how you dare, with what you dare, and when you dare. Do me right, or I will protect your cowardice, or protest your cowardice. You have killed a sweet lady, and her death shall fall heavy on you. Let me hear from you." So, for interpretation, I said this passage is important because it shows a character trait of Benedict that we haven't seen yet in the play. It shows how Benedict is protective and loyal to his friends, but it also shows that he has the courage to call them out and go against them when needed. So I think this shows how strong of a character Benedict is, and how sometimes his strength and bravery goes unnoticed. Because the fact that he was brave enough to tell Claudio, who's one of his oldest friends, that what he did was wrong is pretty admirable. Because nowadays I feel a lot of people aren't strong enough to tell their friends that what they're doing is bad. I mean, especially in high school, where half the kids are drinking underage or smoking weed. People not being strong enough to stand up to their friends, they're open to peer pressure, and most likely they end up doing the bad things that their friends do, only because they don't have the strength to stand up to them. And although it hasn't been a past experience, I think it's part of the overall high school experience that every teenager goes through. And then for implications, I said before this part of the play, Benedict is just portrayed as a comic character that has funny wit battles with Beatrice, and his only plot in the story was his love story with Beatrice that only started because people told him and Beatrice lies about each other. And so his part in the story is overall more of a comic relief type, and he doesn't serve a serious purpose in the plot. But when Benedict talks to Claudio in this scene, we see a change in his personality and his purpose, because now he has a serious part, because he's calling out his friend for killing Hero, an innocent woman. And he says that Claudio is going to pay dearly for her death. So although Claudio and Benedict have only been friends, or they've been friends for a long time, Benedict's attitude toward his friend changes once he realizes that his friend did something really bad. Before they just used to joke around, and now he wants to duel with Claudio because of what Claudio did. So this turnaround in Benedict's attitude and personality is shocking and confusing at the audience at first, but it's also confusing for Claudio and Don Pedro because it's so different from how Benedict is portrayed or acted in the earlier scenes. But then in the end, the scene even though it's super different from his usual storyline, it ends up leading back to his love for Beatrice, because as Claudio and Don Pedro realize afterwards, only Benedict's love for Beatrice and her family, which includes Hero, who died, could have made him or motivated him to challenge his dearest friend, which is what it looks like, dearest friend, to a fight to the death. So
Okay, so I liked how you brought in the friends thing and pushing that and confronting them, because I know you said especially at this age, even if your friend just does something, you're afraid to lose them because everyone's changing in high school, and it's really hard to be oh well, I don't think that what you're doing is okay, because everyone's very on edge, and because of everything that's going on, because everyone's experiencing the same things. So, well, not the same, but school-wise, pretty much the same. So it's hard to do that, and it shows the dynamics of Benedict when he does this. 'Cause everyone in the story, for the most part, is a static character. They're kind of the same. Claudio, he never learns his lesson pretty much. Just when he's oh, well, we have another wife for you. He's oh, okay, perfect. We'll pretend Hero never happened. Because Benedict and Beatrice, I think, are the most dynamic throughout the story, because they're the ones changing and they learn, and this is a learning experience for him.
Yeah, I really liked how you talked also about the high school stuff and all that, partly because Claudio and Benedict are they're just so close, and it's I talked about how the love is kind of what drove him to do it, because not only is it just hard to do it because of their friendship, but I also feel Benedict's mostly driven to do it by his love for Beatrice, which shows just the extent of his love for her, because in order to challenge your best friend, you have to love somebody a lot, because challenging is actually fighting,
yeah.
And that's you can kill somebody. So I think that's really scary. But then I think it's also kind of interesting how at the beginning of the story it was all about Benedict being just like this funny guy who we were like, oh, he's never gonna get married, never gonna do any of this stuff. But so we kind of, if you think about that, was kind of like a foreshadowing. You kind of were like, well, maybe since they're emphasizing this so much, it's gonna turn around. That's what I thought.
Okay, so my passage is kind of long, but it's during the wedding, and this is when Claudio's talking to Leonardo and Don Pedro and confronting them about Hero. So he says, "Good prince, you have taught me how to accept things nobly. There, Leonardo, take your daughter back. Don't insult a friend by giving him a beautiful orange that rots inside. She only appears honorable from the outside. Look how she blushes like a virgin. Oh, sin can disguise itself so artfully. Doesn't that rising blush suggest that she is virtuous and innocent? All of you who are looking at her, wouldn't you swear that she's a virgin, judging by these outward shows? But she is no virgin. She has been in a man's bed. She blushes from guilt, not modesty." So I interpreted this passage as those scenes in the movies where brides just like randomly run out of the wedding room and everyone else is just kind of like, what's going on? Because everyone thought Hero and Claudio were okay up until this moment. Like, Hero even thought they were okay. And, like, Hero ended up passing out of shock. And it's kind of like Claudio is this dramatic bride. And I don't know what it is in the movies, but here it's like he's causing this dramatic scene for interpretation of what other people have told him. So I think this passage also summarizes a lot of the play, because in the play people are quick to believe and assume like what others are telling them, and it's seen like through Benedict and Beatrice, because it's like, oh, he loves me, I love him too. Oh, she loves me, I love her too. And they never said it to each other at first. It was just like, oh, okay, sure, why not? And it's how Claudio never saw Hero in the room, he just saw shadows. But as soon as they were like, oh yeah, that's Hero, she's cheating on you, he believed them. So it kind of shows Claudio's personality, because he confronted her about this at the wedding. I don't know how many people were at the wedding, but Claudio and Hero were a big deal, so I assume there were lots of people there. And so it was probably really embarrassing, so he chose to do it there and instead of in private. And I think it shows the amount of pride Claudio has, like, you no good for me, you're not worthy of my love, like, how dare you do this to me, Leonardo, kind of putting the blame on everyone else to kind of shut them down. And so like he literally like a couple scenes goes like, I love you, Hero, like I can't wait to get married. So it shows like the perspective and how people influence others' opinions a lot. And this happens a lot in today's society, like pretty much everything has come from someone saying something. Like t-shirt and leggings, someone's like, oh yeah, that's really comfortable. Okay, let's all wear that now. Like the pajama pants, like let's make them plaid. Okay, like everything's plaid now. Like ripped jeans, like they weren't a thing till last year, till someone was like, oh, ripped jeans are cool. Okay, now we're all gonna wear them. And also his treatment of Hero here, and it shows like his lack of maturity and how he stays pretty the same throughout the entire book, because he's immature in the beginning, and even after Hero dies, he's like fake mourning her, but then they're like, you have a new wife. So it shows like he doesn't really care about other people. He still has the little kid mind like Benedict and Beatrice. So yeah.
Sorry. So I really liked when you talked about like the brides running out of the wedding, except now it's like Claudio who's kind of finding like when brides run out of wedding, I feel like they're worrying, they're like every possible reason in my mind why I shouldn't marry this guy. They're like, no, like okay, now I gotta go. And like I feel like that's like Claudio. He's like prideful, but he's also kind of freaking out of that moment. And he's like, this is every reason why I shouldn't marry her, and I have to justify myself to get out of this. So I feel like that's why he chose to kind of denounce her in front of like the whole congregation or whatever you want to call it. And also when you talked about Claudio choosing to do it like in front of everybody and just assuming it so quickly, like that makes me question, does he really love her? Because he didn't even have concrete proof that it was her in the room, And if he really loved her, even like if she cheated on him, he would like go and talk to her about it and be like, hey, like listen, was that actually you in the room? Like be honest with me, but he didn't. And I think that kind of like makes me question a little bit whether his feelings were like really true. Yeah.
So, I was gonna pick this passage and I changed it at the last minute. But yeah, I think this is a really important passage because Claudio, like you said, he just accuses Hero without like, you know, knowing for sure. But I like how you pointed out how like when people say something that everyone like believes it, you know, because like, you know, like you said, like in high school, like everyone believes it, everyone tells them. And it just kind of shows like the power of like words or like, you know, actions, I think, because you know, even if just one person says it, everyone starts like spreading it and believing it. So I think, well, like power of the rumor, basically, because just like, you know, in real life, but like in the story too, like just one person saying that this action or something like happened, it has like a super large impact. And you know, in the end, like Claudio calls off the marriage, and you know, it's like the dramatic bride. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting how like the power of like the rumor is like shown. Oh yeah, we did debrief the process. Okay, so I think we talked about some really important passages. Like you talked about how when Claudio confronted like the whole church about Hero not being a virgin anymore, and I talked about how you know, Benedict's like character changed. You know, when he became like not comic but more of a serious character. And Sarah, you talked about how
Jealousy.
And then Emma was like the kiddishness.
Yeah, like the childish
Benedict's
of Benedict.
Yeah, kiddishness.
So I think like these all kind of they're very important to the plot. I mean, obviously, but like they're all kind of turning points in the plot, I think. Like this is like Emma's thing with the he's like, oh my gosh, they love each other now. So that's a big turning point, and I think Don John's jealousy, obviously that leads to the whole Claudio and Hero cheating scandal, whatever, and just everybody's, I think, had a really big contribution to the way the story turned out, and we can see that there's a lot of things we can relate to in all of them, and just a lot of things that are lying underneath the text.
Like when it first said like personal like interpretation or like experience, I was like, how can we relate to like this Shakespeare book from like 400 years ago? But then when you really think about it, like there are lots of parts that you could like, you know, put into like your own
Jealousy,
experiences.
peer pressure, all that stuff.
And I really think, like you said, like it shows how much happened back then and how it's still happening today. Like it's kind of different because we don't really have a problem with princes and governor daughters cheating in our lives, but it happens, and the general overall thing, like the rumors, the childish behavior, like it happens and it's part of life.
And it can wreck people's
Exactly. Like it happened to Don John.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how the story turns out like fine in the end. Like everything just gets resolved, and like
I mean, that's how it's stories.
It's like those Once Upon a Time stories.
I know, and it like kind of contradicts my idea of Shakespeare because I always think about the tragedy.
How everyone dies in the end.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, different than real life because like the book, like everything's happy ending, but like in real life it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's like the Disney fairy tales.
I think I'm done.
Okay.